All right, we're going to walk through the pipeline for retargeting motion capture data from our recording that we made in Motive and putting it on a character in Motion Builder. First thing I'm going to do is just get a character. This character has a skeleton. You don't have to use Mixamo for this. You can use a character with a skeleton from anywhere. It's going to be the same process. You should make a character somewhere too if you don't have one. I'm going to get my zombie character again in a T-pose. Some things to note about this character in the T-pose. Its fingers are a little splayed out. Its arms are pretty straight, T-pose. Its legs are comfortably separated. Not straight up and down, but that's perfectly fine. This is a good T-pose. Other things to note and keep track of, although this character has pretty form-fit clothing on. Little leather bits on the shoe. Or think about some of these other characters like the peasant girl, apparently. Or a warrior woman here with these big armor pieces. You're not wearing that stuff when you're recording motion capture. You're wearing a really tight mocap suit, right? So those sorts of clothing pieces and geometry, those are things that could possibly collide through your body depending on what your movements are. That's something that you should keep in mind while filming, while recording your mocap. There's also things that we can clean up in post-production. And we'll look at a little bit of that today. Today we're just going to do a motion builder basic 101 setup with retargeting one character at a time. We're not going to get into batch retargeting or anything like that, but I think maybe we can get into a little cleanup as well, and then we'll import into Unreal. So I'm going to get my zombie character. Remember, we are not using motion capture from Mixamo anymore. As much as we love the twerking and the strut walk and the hip hop dance and all this stuff, we're not using this anymore. I'm going to do my own zombie stand-up animation. Or I already did. Let's say I already did. I already recorded it. I'm just going to use the character here. Just using Mixamo as a character creator now. Download, FBX, T-pose, wherever you're getting your 3D model from. That's fine. But you need it to have a skeleton. You need it to be rigged. So I already have that downloaded. Oops. Just going to rename my file. Just call it Mixamo Zombie. Throughout this process, we're going to be saving multiple files. I'm going to create a new folder for myself to start putting all of this in. So we can stay organized. Motion Builder is fairly unforgiving at the undo button. So we're going to be saving unique files throughout this process. At kind of every big junction in the process, we'll be saving a file out so we can go back if we screw up. The undo button hardly ever works. All right, so I have a model with the skeleton on a zombie character. Close down Mixamo. Close down Unreal. Open up Motion Builder. So this is Motion Builder. Has a timeline down bottom that you can scrub through. It has a navigator in the bottom left. You can click on these little pluses to expand these menus. We will be doing that. It is not the most intuitive program, I would say. If you have multiple takes in a file, which we shouldn't in this case, but if you do, there's a drop down right here in the middle that you can click on to select those animations. So if you ever have multiple animations in a file for some reason, you're not seeing your right one, you click on this drop down and select the one that's right. Play button, loop controls, speed controls. Speed control is incredibly useful when you're doing cleanup. Spend forever doing cleanup on hands and stuff like that, or animation on hands. You know, change this from 1x mode and change it to, you know, like 0.10 mode. It would be super slow-mo, a tenth the speed. Frames per second. There's also some buttons up here at the top that we'll look at once we import something. And then our character controls window in the top right, which we'll be using a lot. So first things first, we're going to import the character. The order of these things is kind of arbitrary, but I like to import the character first. So I'm going to go to File, Open. Notice the distinction here, File Open and File Merge. In Motion Builder, we're just opening FBX files. So when we open our character FBX file, I'm going to go to File Open. And then when I want to import my motion capture data, which is also an FBX file, I don't want to go to Open, because if I go to Open, I'm just going to open that new file and overwrite my existing file. In that case, I'm going to go to Merge. So the first time we're doing Open, because it's a new project, I'm opening up the first thing. When we're bringing in the animation, we're going to go to Merge. You can also drag these files in if you don't want to go to File Open. Where's my folder? There we go. Mixamo Zombie, FBX. We can import all of this stuff here, that's fine. Open. And here's our character. It doesn't have any animation on it. It's just a character. So some things to keep track of here, just UI-wise. In the top left, we have different view modes, just like in any 3D program. So if I went to View, Orthographic, Front, I could see an orthographic camera view. Orthographic cameras are cameras without perspective. They're just flat. These orthographic views are in all 3D softwares. It's also a Motion Builder. These views are useful for proper alignment before you do the characterization process. Is this character on the ground? Looks like they are. Really zoom in. You can always go back to View, Perspective. Perspective is what we are usually in. You can also use Control F and Control E to switch back and forth between these views. Controls. We should probably talk about controls. You go to Settings up top here, Settings Interaction Mode. I'm going to tell you what I do. I set mine to Maya. The Maya ones are most like Unreal. It's also what I have burned into my muscle memory, Maya. By default, you probably have Motion Builder on. I don't even know what those controls are off the top of my head. I don't have room in my brain for more keyboard shortcuts for different softwares. So in this class, I'm going to set mine to Maya. Then we can hold down Alt and left click to orbit. We can hold down Alt and right click to zoom in and out. We can hold down Alt and middle mouse button to pan. Same stuff as Unreal. And a lot of other 3D softwares. You can also marquee select things by dragging with your left mouse button. You can also hit the F key on your keyboard to focus on what you have selected. F for focus. Useful to have. Otherwise, it's just another 3D program. Anybody struggling? All right. I'm not going to take it too fast here. Question? Yours may not have the skeleton view on your character. We can change that in the display mode up top, or Control A. This is very useful keyboard shortcut to know. Control A will alternate between these views. Model only shows just the model. This is model only. Normal shows the joints. You can see the joints at the tips of the fingers, but we can't see through the body. This is model only, shows none of the joints. And X-ray. X-ray shows you the joints through the body. It's nice to switch these views because once you have a bunch of skeletons interacting, sometimes they can get kind of confusing. Looks like a bunch of spaghetti all mixed up. So Control A, or you can go to the display options up top. Renderer, we don't really use renderer. Your character should be located at 000 by default. Almost always they will be. It should hopefully be on the floor as well. Let's go ahead and characterize this character. So I'm going to go into X-ray mode, Control A, or display X-ray. And I'm going to select the hips. Just the hips. Now down here in the navigator, if you click on the plus next to scene, scene shows you everything in the scene. Right now I have two different teapots here. Teapot is kind of like a throwback to old 3D modeling programs. The first one, CH10, that happens to be what Mixamo calls this zombie character. Character 10, I guess. I don't know. I'm just going to leave that as is so I don't screw up anything. And then Mixamo rig 5 hips. That's the actual rig. Those are the actual joints. CH10, I think, is the model itself and all the different parts of the model. And if you click on the plus on these things, you can see what's in them. You can see CH10, that is the model. That is the different materials and textures. I don't really need to worry about that. But were you to want to delete things, sometimes Motion Builder likes to hang on to different parts and you have to delete things multiple times. Just know that this is where all of the assets live. Mixamo rig hips, like I was saying, this is the whole skeleton hierarchy for this character. And once we import the motion capture, we're going to have more stuff in here. Some things to know while we're here. You could spend a lot of time clicking on the plus buttons on all these spines and expanding them and going into the head and the neck and left shoulder, left arm, left hand. Each finger has flyout menus. There might be times where you want to expand this quickly. If you right click, you can say select branches, and that will select everything. You can see when I have nothing selected, and then if I go to the root here, the root is the original node of the skeleton tree, and say select branches, it selects everything, it turns green. Or when I select on the left shoulder here in the outliner, in the navigator, it selects the left shoulder up here. Just basic 3D, good things to know. You might also want to expand all these branches like I was saying. It would take a little bit of time to go through all the pluses here and expand all these menus. If you select all your branches, they're called branches in Motion Builder. If you select all your branches by right-clicking on the root, or you don't have to click on the root, whatever parent you want to expand, go select branches, and then expand branches or collapse branches. Collapse branches are going to collapse them all. Expand branches, it's going to expand them all. Right? We don't need to do that in this case, but it is a basic motion builder thing that you should know how to do, and kind of a quirk of the software that is a little different than other things. A lot of the useful keyboard shortcuts for other softwares don't work in this case. Okay. Let's characterize this character. So I'm going to select the hips on my zombie character, and then in the bottom right, in the asset browser, I'm going to go to templates, characters, select character, and drag this little avatar icon called character, drag it onto the hips of my character. When I do that, it's going to pop up a little thing saying characterize. I'm going to click it, and it's going to ask, is the character facing positive Z? Is it a biped or quadruped? It is facing positive Z. How do I know? Because that purple line right there, which is the Z axis, is coming out towards me. It's coming out of the monitor towards me. And the character is facing that direction. You can see its belly right now facing me, right? If your character is not aligned that way, then you're going to need to rotate it. This is why in the motion capture ballroom, when we calibrate the floor, I say to point positive Z towards the director, the computer workstation, right? So that you're facing your director, so that you don't have to rotate the bodies in Motion Builder. Saves you a step. If you have multiple actors in a scene and one is facing this way and one is facing this way and one is facing halfway this way, you're going to have to rotate all that shit. Everybody faces the same way. Unless you hate yourself and enjoy doing more tedious motion builder work, which could be the case. All right, biped. Pop quiz. What do I need to make sure of before I characterize the character? What position does it need to be in? T-pose, right? When we clicked characterize, we are telling Motion Builder that's in a T-pose. Actually, Motion Builder doesn't care if it's in a T-pose. It just wants the data it's receiving and the character to be in the same pose. A T-pose is just an easy pose to make sure that both things are similar to each other. All right, we clicked characterize, and you should have seen this little menu in the top right change a little bit. That's all right. We'll revisit that menu in a second. In the meantime, I'm going to click on, in my navigator, I'm going to click on characters. And now I have a character. The first one's called character. The second one's called character 1. The second one after that's called character 2. I'm going to keep this character. Character makes sense as a name for my zombie guy here. But I will rename my motion capture data. Like in the slides, I usually call the one character, and I usually call the other thing mocap or motion capture data. Nothing exciting has happened yet. This is all set up. And once you get good at this, you can do this in about 10 seconds. All right, next step. Let's bring in some motion capture data. So file, merge, or if you drag the file in, make sure you select merge and not open. You know, this might be a step where I save now and say, you know, zombie characterized, but we can skip that right now. File, merge. Where's my motion capture data? I don't think I moved it into that folder. Confrontation 00, I think I sent you guys. All right. Just click merge. I want to bring in all this stuff. And if you're using my file, you'll see two different skeletons. And if you play it, they will animate. For using your file, I don't know how many skeletons you have. If you have one, that's absolutely fine. Really, I want to turn this into one anyways. So we're going to delete the second one. I'll show you how to do that. It's like these stick figures are just fighting around poor zombie T-pose guy. All right, how do we delete stuff? Well, I'm going to delete this one right here. And if I click on scene, this one, it's like somebody did an Ultraman project that I have this data from. Nobody in this class, this is old stuff. Ultraman. I'm going to select all these joints and I'm just going to hit delete. But notice, even though I hit delete, Ultraman root is still there. So sometimes you need to delete multiple times. You need to make sure that you're right-clicking, select all branches, then hit delete. Now it's gone. Okay. So now I have one file that I'm working with here. I want to scrub to a point in the timeline where I have the T-pose. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at a front view, Control F, or view orthographic front. Control F. Well, something I noticed right away about this T-pose from the mocap data. What's up with the shoulders? They're sagging a little bit, huh? This is why views like the front view are good, because you might not notice from perspective view, be like, oh yeah, this looks pretty good. But in front view, it becomes very obvious that that T-pose is a little saggy. Is that a big deal? Is anybody going to notice? Are you going to notice? I don't know. Depends on what you're doing. Sometimes you can get away with things like this, sometimes not. It really depends on what your character is, what the animation is, what they're doing, how precise of movements do they need to do, what clothes are they wearing. All those sorts of things can matter. If we were to characterize this right now, we would essentially say that whenever the motion capture data is like this, that means the character is really like this. You can see like that. That might not seem like a big difference, but it can become a big difference in other sorts of movements. If we T-pose, if we said an A pose was actually a T-pose, and we're saying that this position of motion capture data is this on the character. So when the motion capture data actually turns into a T-pose, our zombie's going to be like this. If we said an A pose was a T-pose. So our mission is to make this a proper T-pose. So a couple different ways we can do that. One way we can do it, this is a little bit of a brute force way, is to go into the scene and not Mixamo, that's the zombie. But if I go into the monster, which I guess is this is what the motive take was called way back when. If I go on the hips of the monster and then I right click and say select branches, and then I right click again, go to 0, go to rotation, 0, rotation. If I click this, it's going to zero out all the rotation of the joints and put it in its original pose when the model was created, which is usually a T-pose by design. There's a reason for these sorts of things. So if I click this now, ba-bam. That is about as perfect as a T-pose as you will ever see, an impossibly perfect T-pose. None of you are ever going to be able to do that. Now that might be too perfect though, look. Too perfect. So you could brute force by zeroing out the rotations like that, or we can do it manually. Let's take a look at doing it manually. So if I grab onto, in my case, the monster's hips, and just like in Unreal, the W, E, and R keys alternate between translate, rotate, and scale. These buttons are also over here. The top one is translate, rotate, scale. If I hit the W key, I can now move my character around. And I'm staying in front view. And I'm going to move my character on top of, I'm going to move my motion capture skeleton on top of my character. Now this positioning is only important for us to help visualize if we're rotating the joints and to match. We don't actually have to place them on top of each other, just to help us with our alignment process. Now I could grab onto the individual joints and rotate them to kind of match as best as possible. Pro tip here, when we're rotating joints, we want to make sure that we're in local rotation mode and not world translation mode. What do I mean by that? Or global versus local. So if I look at this joint right here, let me go back into front view. If I look at this joint right here, and I have my rotation widget on, right? It's kind of hard to see on the screen. Let me see if I can zoom in. That shoulder joint is rotated down a little bit, right? Whereas the rotation widget right there says that it's perfectly level, straight up and down. You can see the green and the red axis of the rotation tool. It's a perfect cross, right? That's because I'm in world space right now, global space. Some programs call it world, some call it global. Unreal also has this too. All 3D programs have this. When I'm rotating joints, I want to be in local. So how can I do that? It's this little button right here underneath the cursor, the little coordinate icon. If I click on that and I go to local, then you're going to see that the widget aligns with the joint. Now it's kind of going in the same direction, right? So our goal, you don't have to be perfect this first time. Our goal is to try to make these match. And some skeletons might be vastly different. Like this skeleton has a clavicle joint. So do you rotate the clavicle joint and then rotate the shoulder joint up and then rotate the elbow up? This is a little bit of a trial and error thing till you get familiar with your characters. You don't really know until you put the animation data on the character and see what happens. You know, this right now is being pretty nuanced with things. We could have been done in about 30 seconds. Take a look at the legs too. Just try to align them. You know, they're different characters, different proportions, so they're never going to match up perfectly. And whatever you do, when you are doing this, do not scrub the timeline. You scrub the timeline because you have a bunch of keyframes there. It's going to sap all your hard work that you're doing right now. It's going to snap it away. So do not touch the timeline until after we characterize. Might also be useful to switch the view to an orthographic top view. The top view. Didn't even know my arms were bent back a little bit. Let's bring those forward. What's that? using the bio control. We'll break them. Yeah. I think scroll wheel does too. That's fine. Scale the skeleton. Scale it. Oh, don't scale the character, scale the dimension. This is just, you're not actually scaling any of the data. All you're doing is temporarily scaling the skeleton so that you can better rotate the joints so we can characterize it. After we snap back to its original scale. Because all of the scale information is temporarily. You're just temporarily matching it up so that you can characterize it. So if that helps you to scale it, that's fine. But you don't make that all right, right. So, all right, we haven't done anything yet. Other things that I notice here, it looks like these are feet that I'm clicked on right now. I'm looking at a top view. Maybe I would want to drag the hips on top of this too. Well, that's fine for my purposes. Oop. Maybe I don't want to be in local for this one. I just want to rotate globally. Now, you could really drive yourself crazy with this, and there is diminishing returns after a certain point. In the interest of time, I think that we'll move on to the next step. We'll see how this goes. Might turn out like trash. We'll see. I've never done this character before. All right, next step is very similar to what we already did with the zombie. We characterize the zombie, or your character. Now we need to characterize the motion capture data. Remember, characterization is telling Motion Builder, this character, this data is in a T-pose. It is facing positive Z and in a T-pose. So we're going to select the hips of our motion capture data. Go back down to the bottom right, grab the character, and drag it on the hips.
Wait, what did you drag for the hips?
The little character icon down here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I was a dummy and I dragged my timeline, so All that hard work that I just did is destroyed. That's all right. I'll just use this T-pose. Oops. Characterize. You wanted to have the pop-up that says characterize and go to biped. So now I have character and character one. Character one is the motion capture skeleton. I'm going to right click on that character one in my navigator and rename it just to mocap. Character one's a little vague. So after you characterize, you can scrub the timeline if you want. It's not really necessary. But now comes the magical process of retargeting, translating the data from the one to the other. So in our drop-down menus up top here, we want to set character, the zombie, or whatever you're using, to character, the character slot, and source, you want that to be the motion capture data, whatever you called that. I called mine mocap. As soon as you do that, you should see your character jump on top of the motion capture data. And then if you scrub your timeline or click play or whatever, you should see it start to do its thing. This is where those display options come in handy, the Control A, because now you have two skeletons on top of each other, the original skeleton and the character skeleton. Question? Not showing up in source. It didn't actually. Characterize like that. Yeah. Yeah. Source. So we didn't actually characterize. Scroll down, right? Sometimes if you miss the hits, it will. When you drag the character icon on top of the hips, make sure you're getting the pop-up that says characterize and then has the little menu that says biped or quadruped. If you don't get that, it's because you missed with your dragging. Zoom in so you can actually put it on the hips. Or if you're worried about doing that, don't drag it into the viewport, just drag it onto the hips in the navigator or the outliner. There we go, look at that. We got it.
Wait, what did you do to stop seeing the skeleton of the other?
Display mode up top here.
Oh, and okay, turn off.
Or Control A. Control A cycles through. So at this point, I could bring this straight into Unreal. All I would have to do is I have to bake the skeleton and save it, and then I can import it into Unreal. If you're happy with it, that's what you could do. But there are some things that I'm not super happy with. For instance, we're not going to spend all day editing this, but the hand goes through the ground here. And if it goes through the ground in Motion Builder, it's going to go through the ground in Unreal. You also, there's not much we can really do about this. Let's see how this little flap from the boots here, it actually goes through the ground as well. Maybe if I look at a side view, this will be a little bit more obvious. Yeah, everything below this line right here, the butt is just right on the ground, but everything else is below the ground. Is that a problem? Are you going to notice? I don't know. I don't think a lot of times you don't have to get crazy with being perfect. If nobody sees it, it doesn't matter. Remember I said if there's a glitch, just cut away or have a bird fly in front of the screen or whatever. Just hide it, you know? If it's crucial, then yeah, you absolutely should clean it up. But don't drive yourself crazy. Are you really going to notice that that little part of the boot is poking through the ground? If it's an extreme close up and it focused on the character's boots and this is a core part of the story where it's about the character's boots, then yeah, it probably is important. But if it's a far away shot, probably not going to notice, right? That's a judgment call that you need to make. All I can do is show you the tools to correct these things, but ultimately you're the one that has to decide if it's worth it or not and put the work in. All right, let's go to the next step. Like I said, we could almost be done here if we were happy with this, but I'm never happy, so we're going to move to the next step. I'm going to save this though. Remember I said Motion Builder is fairly unforgiving at undoing things. So all we do is just go File, Save As. And I'm going to call this Zombie Motion Builder. MOBU is like the Mobu is the shorthand for Motion Builder. Oh, zombie is spelled wrong. What do I want to call this? Characterized. Do you have to save this? No. But it's a just in case. All right, next step. If we're doing the full pipeline, the next step would be to do the control rig. So we've retargeted. Now we're going to plot it to a control rig. And then we're going to do some cleanup. Fix errors and intersections. So to plot this to a control rig, this is actually going to take away our characterization and it's going to bake it into a rig that's called a control rig, an editing rig. We click this big blue button up top right, and go to Bake Control Rig. Bake Control Rig. It's going to say, what type of rig do you want to create? We want to create an FKIK rig. Let it process. And depending on your view mode, nothing will seem like it's changed. If you change your view mode to X-ray though, you will see that now you have kind of a colorful little skeleton. This colorful little skeleton is a control rig. Control rigs are cool because I can grab onto the wrist joint and do things where the rest of the body comes along for the ride, or in this case, the rest of the body part. That seems not anatomically correct, but so we're not animating one joint at a time anymore. This can save an enormous amount of time. This is called an FK-IK rig, forward and inverse kinematics. Some useful things to know. If for some reason this is not allowing you to move a joint, we have some options over here. These little people with the red and blue dots on them. The first one on the right with the single red dot on the hand, this means that only that joint that I have selected can be edited. So if I wanted to rotate this wrist, I could do that, but I can't move it and have the rest of the arm move. If I wanted to do that, I would have to use one of these other options. This next one right here is called body part. Now I can grab onto this and the whole arm moves, but not the body, just up to the shoulder or the clavicle even. If I click on the one on the extreme left, now I can drag the whole darn body around just by grabbing the hand. It's almost like if you were to grab the zombie by the wrist and yank it across the floor, you could do that. You know, all of these are just editing filters, animation editing filters. But if you're ever stumped sometime while editing, you're like, why can't I move that? It probably has to do with which body part toggle up top you have selected. These things up here. All right. So what do we want to do here? Maybe I want to try to fix, let's do a little animation. This skeleton right here is not really even that useful anymore because we're just using the control rig. Hypothetically, we could delete this. We'll just keep it for now. All right, so I want to fix this hand. We're not going to be perfect about it. I'm just going to get you started, and then you can spend a lot of time doing this sort of stuff. So the hand goes through the ground, right? Down here, kind of the middle, this is where all of the animation controls. If I click on my character, oops. If I click on my character and zoom in here, you can see a bunch of these little upside down pyramid icons. These are keyframes. For every frame of animation, there is a keyframe that is telling the position of every single joint. I don't want to edit those keyframes. I want to put a modifier on top of those, or the wrist in this case, the wrist that I'm going to try to fix because it's poking through the ground. So I'm going to create an animation layer that I'm animating on top of. Notice when I click on base animation, I see all of the keyframes here. When I click on, sorry, there's a little pause when I zoom out. When I click on animation layer 1, all those keyframes disappear because there is no keyframes yet. This animation layer is sitting on top of the base animation. You can create new animation layers with a little green plus here. So I'm going to start editing this. I'm going to grab onto the wrist and I'm going to put a key. I'm going to find a spot where before the hand goes through the ground, right? Like right here. And I'm going to set a keyframe saying at this point in time, this position of the wrist is okay. And let's just be happy with this right now. This is kind of a quick and dirty cleanup here. To add a keyframe here, I can click the key button. You can also click the key icon here if you want to set auto keyframes every single time you move or make a rotation. I'm going to click the key button. There's a keyframe that got put down at frame 300. I'm saying right here, this is where the wrist is positioned. And I'm going to scrub through this a little bit, and then I'm going to find where it, the zombie gets up and the hand is not a problem anymore. And I'm also going to put a keyframe here. And then I'm going to go back and find where it is a problem, where it first goes through the ground. And I kind of like to find the resting points where the animation just kind of stops for a second, where it reaches its minimum and its kind of maximum rotation. So I'm going to go right here. And I'm going to raise the wrist up. The fingers are still a little problem. They're a work in progress. Go into local rotation. This is the tedious work that takes a bazillion years. You have to determine how important this sort of stuff is. We don't have any finger animation included, so that would be an entirely other step at this point. I'm just worried about the wrist and the palm. That's good enough for right now. Click the keyframe button. So now as I scrub back and forth through these, now my wrist doesn't go through the ground anymore. There's still a little bit maybe here where it peeks through again. So maybe I would want to do something else with it again. Maybe raise up the whole arm. I don't know. I'm just worried about the wrist right now. I don't really like that bend that much. Keyframe. But the point is that just with a couple keyframes here, now I don't have that movement that happens anymore. See, that's what it was. And that's what the animation layer with the keyframes that I just did fixed. Is it perfect? No, I need to spend a lot more time with those. I need to adjust some other body parts too. You can mute animation layers with the little no sound there. You can also lock them so you don't accidentally do anything with them. You can have multiple animation layers on top of each other, depending on how you like to work. Probably want to do the other hand too. In the interest of time, I just wanted to show you one joint. Maybe we go crazy with one other joint really quick. Let's select the shoulder joint, and I'm going to create a new animation layer for the shoulder. And I don't know, why don't I just mess up the whole thing? Let's do something extreme. Like this character's arm is always going to be like this. I'm going to set a keyframe. So now the entire duration of this animation, it's just always crazy. But if you wanted to do like some permanent changes where you want to rotate the character's head just up, you just notice that for some reason your performer's chin was always pointed down a little bit too much. or maybe up too much. Then you only need to set one keyframe potentially. Whoa, 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 now we're getting too crazy. What just happened? Oh, I think I rotated the hips by accident. That's why. Yeah. Rotate the head just up. So now I just rotated the head and set a keyframe, so it's just always up now. I would need to do much more nuance about that. Put a lot more keyframes. You know, the head needs to pop up at this certain part, but not the other parts. That means I need to put more keyframes down, kind of choose where I want those movements to happen at. I'm gonna undo all that stuff. What if I wanted to do something like fingers? There's no finger animation on this character. I'm going to show you a really cool thing. I'm going to create a new animation layer. You can always name these as well. It's fingers. And I'm going to select the fingers. And I'm going to scrub back a little bit. But basically what I want this character to do is when it puts his arms up right here, not right there, right. When it puts its arms up right here, I want it to make fists of its hands, okay? So it's going to have its hands down. I'm going to set I selected all the joints that I want to keyframe. I'm going to click the key button. Oops. Just the selection. Click the key button. I'm just editing one body part right now, so I'm clicked on just the selection because all I have selected is the fingers or the tips of the fingers. I'm going to rotate these. Oop, doesn't want to do the rotation because I need to click on body parts, not selection. Body parts, which is the second one. That one. The cool thing about rotating all the fingers together is that they tend to rotate pretty well into a fist, so you don't have to do each one, which takes a lot of time. But the thumb usually gets kind of messed up, so you have to edit that one separately. Fingers, fingers, fingers. Fist. But be careful because I didn't do that at the proper keyframe. So as soon as I moved my timeline slider, all my movement for the fist just jumped back. What I need to do is I need to find the spot where I want it to be the fist. Like right here. That's where I need to move to do the fist. Do the thumb. And then select all those that I modified and click key. So I have one keyframe for the fist and one for an open hand because I don't want the fist the entire time. Everything before this keyframe is going to be open hand. Everything after this keyframe is going to be closed fist. I really should have put two keyframes for the closed fist, but I didn't. Guess I could copy and paste the keyframe. But I'm going to show you a cool feature here. Because this could take forever to animate fingers, especially because they have so many joints, right? Let's look at this in slow motion real quick. kind of focus on the hand. So play. Oh, that's weird. That keyframe is not open hand. It's actually a fist, so whoops. Open that back up. Set a keyframe for that. Now we should have open hand. This sort of animation incredibly tedious. This is why people would want to do motion capture, but not have to do cleanup. So the hand starts open. I click play. Now you can see it starts to close. It's closed, and it stays closed. I want to show you these things called poses now. You can do this for any body part, but it really makes sense for hands. So down here in the bottom right, you have a menu called Pose Controls. I select the joints that I want to define a pose for. In this case, closed fist. And I'm going to click the green plus down here. And I'm going to click the drop down, and I'm going to call this, what is this? Hand closed. So I've defined a pose, a preset, if you will, for the hand closed. So I don't have to grab onto all those joints now. All I need to do is select hand closed, and it's going to put all those things in that position. Save a ton of time. Now I'm going to go back to my previous keyframe. Oops. For the hand open, and do the same thing. Click the green plus in the pose controls, define that as hand open. So now, if I scrub a little bit forward, the fist is still closed. I don't have any keyframes here. I don't want to grab onto those joints. All I need to do is double click hand open, and it pops the hand open. And I can set a keyframe, and I can scrub a little bit more, double click hand close. Why is it not doing it? Come on, motion builder. There we go. For some reason, I accidentally turned on my mirroring controls, so that's why it wasn't working. Set a keyframe for that. Scrub a little bit more forward. Hand open. So I just animated the hand opening and closing in a couple times really fast. That would take me a while to do manually. Is that great animation? Not really. This is just a demo. Hand closed. Hand open. Hand closed. Hand open. And really, when you think about animating hands may seem like a lot, because it is, because we have, 5 of these little things that you got to animate. It's a lot harder than animating an arm. But you really only need like hand open, hand close, hand maybe loose, like you don't need a ton of hand positions. And you can usually get away with that unless it's super close detail, or unless your film, I've used this example before, unless your film's about like playing a piano and you need like very detailed finger movements. Nobody gonna notice. But what they will notice is if your hands aren't like this always, when they're not moving at all. See hands like doing stuff and then opening up and then pointing. Oh wow, put a lot of work into this film. But don't get crazy about it. Don't think like, oh, I need my pinky to be that much more farther apart, or fingers need to be super wide, or maybe I need to do one where they're kind of wiggling. Depends on what your film is, but even just a little bit, even just hand closed and hand open, as we did here in the last 10 minutes. It's so much more than just having your character have paddle hands, always. Another thing that you can do with pose controls is that we should be able to mirror this to the other hand, which is nice and useful. Let's see if we can do that. If I select the joints in the left hand, and then there's a big old M icon here for mirror. Assuming your character is symmetrical, you should be able to, yep, I clicked hand close, and now the other hand closed as well. Set a keyframe. And then we can do the same thing for the other hand. There's a nice little indicator here. You can tell when there's a keyframe. If I zoom in on this hand, see how all these dots are white? That means that there's a keyframe on it. If I scrub off of it, see how they're yellow now? It means they're not a keyframe. So I can scrub, and then, oh, there's a keyframe. And I can match it to my other hand if I wanted it to be symmetrical. Notice how down bottom here, I only have 2 keyframes. The reason for that is because I have selected the character's left hand. I put all the keyframes on the character's right hand. The keyframes are dependent on which joints you have selected, right? You're not going to see all the keyframes for everything. That would be madness. It would be very hard to stay organized. All right, let's wrap that up. Let me have the character's hand go back open and then just call it a day. Bring this over into Unreal. All right. Let's save this one more time. File save. I'll call this control rig cleaned. Let's just all agree that we cleaned the heck out of this. We spent 8 hours cleaning this and it looks great. This right now is not Unreal ready. We've retargeted. We plotted to control rig so we could edit the character, do the things like the fingers and fix the hand on the ground. We did the cleanup. Now we need to plot it back to a skeleton. Unreal needs it to be plotted to a skeleton or it's not going to work. And then we can export it to Unreal. If you were to import this FBX file right now into Unreal, it would not work. How do you know if you're in a control rig? Well, it says control rig right up here. Also, you have the little yellow and red and blue rig. We need to click the blue button again. We need to click the blue button again, go down to bake plot, and bake plot to skeleton. Make sure you save a version of your control rig as a separate file before you do this. Once you bake the skeleton, you wipe that control rig away forever. So unless you have a backup file like I just created, you will not be able to get that back unless you redo it. Bake plot to skeleton. Oops. All right. Then you should see all mention of a control rig disappear up here. You should see the control rig disappear in the main menu. Make sure that it's still animated when you scrub, but we just see skeletons here now. That's what we want. Now we can go to File, Save As. I'll just call this one Unreal. Zombie Mobu Unreal. or I should probably call it SK underscore zombie. Attack one or whatever. Apparently, some other animations got saved here, like probably the original Mixamo T pose. It's up to you if you want to export those too. We won't use those, but you can uncheck them if you wanted to. Save. Now I should be able to go to Unreal and import it like what we've done in the past. Motion Builder, find the correct one. Remember, you want to have, well, at this point, I don't have a skeleton. You want to have import animations checked. Hey, no, but congratulations, y'all. I said that happens every class. You guys, nobody complained about not having animations import. Good job. Pat on the back. Import animations, import materials and textures, all the defaults. That should be good. Click import. You might get some errors about smoothing group information. That's fine. You might have stuff about invalid bind poses. That's fine. If they're yellow, they're just more like warnings than errors. Let's see. Let's open up our skeleton or zombie. I mean, not skeleton. Whoops. Looks like I forgot to make his hand go back to flat. It's just always a fist now. That's okay. Animations. There it is in Unreal. Oh, the hand didn't go through the floor. We fixed that. Oh, the fists. Oh, look at that. But it took us like 10 minutes to animate those fingers for 2 seconds of animation. It takes a long time to do frame by frame animation. But think if you were to animate this whole character by hand with no motion capture, not just the fingers, but the whole character, that would take even longer. So that's the value in motion capture, is that it gets us much closer to our goal. Yeah, you might have to clean things up. You might have to adjust some things based off the character, but it saves a ton of time. Hand does not go through the floor. Fingers do, because we didn't fix those, but that's okay. Lost the skin. That's pretty gruesome. Oh, the texture. Yeah, delete those 3 files real quick.
Hey, what's up? It's Phil from Easy Unreal, and if you
All right, this is not the best video, but just something I could pull up. I'm not getting this error myself, but this is something that you will probably see in your motion builder travels, depending on maybe you use the weird frame rate in Motive and Unreal's confused. If for some reason you ever import your animation to Unreal and it just doesn't import, you have all the boxes checked, you have import animations checked, it's just not coming in, be sure to check your logs, your error logs. Oh, let's see if I can even pull that up. Yeah. Be sure to check your message logs. These errors here were yellow. Oh, actually, it did happen for another thing that I was doing on this computer. See these red ones here where it says animation sequence, animation length, some weird frame rate, 22.567, blah, 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 is not compatible with import frame rate of 24 frames per second. If you get this error and you're filed in imports, it's okay. We just need to check another box when we import. So let me show you the box. When you import, this is in the animation section, so you're gonna have to delete all your files again, import again, but make sure you check this box right here, snap to closest frame boundary. And then it should be fine. Let me post this. All right, starting from scratch again. Let's just get a brand new character. We get naked mannequin person here. Use character. Makes him up freaking out. All right, there we go. Download wherever you want to get your characters, fine. Downloading. Switch over to Motion Builder. New project. Open. Set downloads. Import the mannequin. Remember, we need to characterize it first. This is a good T-pose. I don't need to make any adjustments. Click on the asset browser in the bottom. Templates, characters, character. Drag it onto the hips. Make sure you're actually putting it on the hips because you need to get this button right here that says characterize. Click characterize. You want to get this menu, biped. Now we can import the mocap data. Remember, we want to do file merge. So we're merging the mocap with this existing character file. I just have, I don't know what death is. Let's just do this one. See what it is. Looks like there's two mocaps here. I'm just going to delete one. Remember, even though you delete stuff, it might still be in the navigator. So make sure that you right click and select branches and then delete again to get rid of everything. What do we got here? Oh, a death sequence. Okay. But they don't really die. Maybe. I don't know. All right. So now we need to characterize this T-pose. This would be where you would want to go in and make adjustments and try to get this into, you know, a better T-pose. That's what takes time to do. You can see their body is kind of leaning too. That's where it's good to go in the front view. But I'm not going to get that perfect right now. Control F, Control E to go back to perspective. Go to the front. Select the hips. Zoom in on them so you don't miss. Asset browser, character. Drop the character on. Characterize button, characterize. Pop up, biped. I always like to go down into the character menu here and call the mocap one mocap. It was the second one we did, so it is character one. I'm just going to rename that mocap. And then we go up top. Top right, character should be the character. Source should be the mocap. And then it should just work. Very slow because I'm in slow mode. There we go. Oh, that actually looks pretty good with the legs. That looks really good. The wrist is messed up, but that looks good. If you wanted to clean it up, then we need to make it into a control rig. There's never going to be a case where your file doesn't need cleanup. If you skip the control rig, it's just because you're lazy. Honestly, like there's never going to be a time where there's not something to do in the control rig. If it's just a test, then yeah, you don't just skip it. Bake to control rig. Click the blue button. Or let me do it again. Click the blue button. Bake to plot to control rig. FKIK. Remember, Control A can cycle through these options. The wrist is a little weird, but I'm not going to clean anything up right now. Then when you're happy with your cleanups, remember, make sure to save different iterations of the file, different steps of the process, so you can always go back. Remember, the process right now, baking to skeleton, is destructive. So I would save right now a version called control rig so you can go back and keep editing. But when you're done editing, click the blue button, bake plot to skeleton. Boom. File, save as. We should be able to go back to Unreal. Imports, downloads. Sure, import animations is checked. It should be by default. You may get the error that says frame rate is weird. In that case, snap to closest frame boundary will fix that. I think in my case, I'm fine. Make sure you need to import textures and import materials on if you're not getting the textures and materials. Import. And should be good to go. That's it. Really fast. That actually looks really good. It goes through the floor a tiny bit there, but that looks good. The characterization process is fast. It's the cleanup that takes time. But the actual, like, take the motion capture data, slap it on the character, 30 seconds. Once you get fast at it.